It began on a night that looked so ordinary, so painfully calm, that no one could have guessed the air itself was about to turn against them, because there was no storm, no lightning tearing the sky apart, no fire on the horizon, nothing at all that said danger was coming. Only a stillness so deep that even the wind seemed afraid to breathe. Families talked softly in their homes. Children finished their last jokes of the day. Lamps were blown out one by one. Doors were closed, and people slowly slipped into sleep, never knowing that they were lying down beside an invisible tide already moving through the valleys around them. And then the questions began. Questions that would haunt rescuers, scientists, and survivors for years. Because by sunrise, more than 1,700 people were dead, not in ruins or ashes or wreckage, but lying exactly where they had been moments before, as if time had stopped in the middle of a single breath. What kind of disaster kills without breaking a single wall, without burning anything, without leaving a mark, without giving warning, without sound, without light, without even a scream? What kind of disaster arrives like a shadow and leaves only silence behind it? The dogs barked first, they say, barking wildly into the darkness, as if arguing with something no one could see. And then all at once they stopped. And then the birds stopped. And then the people stopped. And the valley slipped into a quiet so complete that it did not feel like night anymore. It felt like the world itself had been switched off. Imagine waking in the middle of the night because the air feels heavy, so heavy your chest won't expand, and your room feels strange, though nothing has changed, and your child is there beside you and you try to reach them. But the moment you stand, the world tips sideways. Your ears fill with rushing sound, and then everything goes dark, as if some great hand simply pinched the flame of your life and blew it out. Rescuers came with sirens in their heads and fear in their throats, expecting explosions or fire or smashed buildings or something, anything, that looked like the kind of disaster humans understand. But instead, they found breakfast bowls still on tables, water still boiling on stoves, doors open, lamps fallen over, people lying as if asleep in doorways, hallways, beds, roads, cars, fields. Sometimes whole families together as if they had knelt to pray and simply never stood again. How, they wondered, can something move through a valley like water but be seen by no one? How can something touch thousands of lives at once yet leave no wounds? How do you fight something that cannot be seen, cannot be smelled, cannot be heard, and gives you no second chance once it reaches you? The lake sat there, as it always had, its surface calm and innocent, a mirror holding the sky, revealing nothing of what roared beneath it. And yet under that quiet skin of water, enormous pressure had been gathering for years, layer after layer of heavy invisible gas, trapped and compressed and waiting, like a held breath no one knows is being held at all. So the question becomes darker and more unsettling the more you think about it. If the most beautiful place can hide the deadliest danger, if a lake can become a weapon, if air can become a killer, then how many other silent things around us are only pretending to be harmless while they wait for the right moment to wake up? Tonight we return to that night, to the last conversations whispered under oil lamps, to the last doors closed, to the final heartbeat before the valley filled with something you cannot see but cannot survive. And we will ask the questions that matter. What really rose from that water? Why did it choose that night? And most frightening of all, could this happen again, somewhere else, while people are sleeping right now, believing that silence is safe? Because this is not a ghost story, and it is not a myth told to children. This is a real night, in a real valley, around a real lake, when the air itself became an ocean you could drown in without ever seeing a drop of water, and when silence for once was the loudest thing in the world. Far away from maps that people actually look at, far from highways and airports and bright cities that never sleep, there is a place hidden among green mountains where the world seems to forget that it exists. And there, in the middle of those silent hills, lies a lake so calm that it looks as if even time is afraid to disturb its surface. The water rests in a perfect circle, like a mirror held up to the sky, reflecting clouds that drift lazily above it. And if you arrived there for the first time, you would probably think you had discovered paradise. No noise, no machines, Only wind, birds, and the slow whisper of leaves touching each other. Villages sit quietly around it. Small houses, dusty roads, evening fires, people who know each other by name and who do not expect anything extraordinary from life because days repeat themselves here. Sunrise, work, laughter, stories by the fire, nightfall, and the lake is simply part of the background, as ordinary as air or sky. But sometimes ordinary things are only pretending. Beneath the glassy, innocent surface, beneath the blue that looks so peaceful from above, the lake is not just water sitting in a bowl. It is a wound in the earth, a crater left by ancient fire, a place where the planet still breathes through cracks that no one can see, slowly, silently, constantly. For years, gas rises from deep volcanic rock and hides in the cold, heavy water at the bottom, dissolving without color, without smell, without sound, like a secret that grows heavier and heavier while nobody notices. Because nothing on the surface changes, the water still shines, the birds still circle above, and life on the shore goes on as always. That is why this lake is frightening. Not because it looks scary, but because it doesn't. It looks harmless, almost fragile, like a place made for postcards and quiet afternoons. Yet inside it, something is being counted. Something is waiting. Something is storing strength the way clouds store storms before they break. People pass by it with baskets and children in conversations about ordinary things. They wash clothes on the shore. They fish from small boats. They throw stones into the water to watch the circles spread and fade, never guessing that the lake has two faces, one for the day and one for the night. And the most unsettling thought is this: if a place so beautiful, so still, so easily forgotten by the world can hide a danger big enough to change hundreds of lives in a single night, then how many other quiet places carry stories we simply haven't heard yet? Lake Nyos sits there even now, blue and calm, pretending to be only water in a bowl of mountains. But those who know its story can never look at it the same way again, because they understand that sometimes the most peaceful places are not the ones you should trust. Sometimes the world's quiet corners are simply the ones no one is listening to. For years, the people who lived around this lake never looked at maps or scientific journals or laboratory reports. Their books were not kept in big city libraries. Their knowledge did not sit on desks beside instruments. It lived in memories and in the stories they told at night. And every generation, as if they somehow understood something unspoken, whispered the same sentence about this lake: something here is not right. The elders of the village would sit by the fire in the evenings and speak softly to the children, telling them that sometimes birds circle above the lake, touch the water, and never rise again, as if the surface simply erases them. That sometimes a fisherman returns at dawn and finds dozens of dead fish floating silently. No bad smell, no storm, no waves. Yet life looks as if someone has pressed an invisible switch and turned it off. Some said that at night a strange white mist lies over the lake, and it feels as though the water itself is breathing, but its breath is not like a human breath. It is heavy, cold, and foreign. Others swore that in the middle of the night a deep, muffled rumble rises from beneath the surface, as if the earth is whispering to itself and politely advising us not to listen too closely. When legends appear, people do not always laugh, because sometimes legend is simply fear speaking in another language. There were mothers who warned children not to go too close to the water. There were men who canceled fishing trips, saying today is a bad day. There were people who could not explain it, but still muttered, the water's not calm today. Even though the surface was as smooth as glass, the sky was clear, there was not even a breath of wind. Yet inside them something uneasy kept moving. Some told of a night when all the animals began behaving strangely at the same moment. Dogs barking wildly, cattle running for no reason, birds suddenly changing direction without a sound. And in the morning the lake's surface was covered with dead fish while the people were fine. Another time the opposite happened. The lake was quiet, fish were fine, but by morning half the village woke with pounding headaches and no memory of the night. Only the feeling of a long, heavy, dreamless sleep. No one knew what it was, so the name of the explanation changed. Some said spirits were angry, Some said the lake did not like people. Others only shrugged and said, "This place is simply like this." And here is the strangest thing. These people who did not speak the language of science, who had never seen a laboratory, may actually have come closest to the truth. They had sensed that the lake was alive. They understood that water is not always just water, that a surface is not always what it seems, that a lake can be more than beauty. It can also be a warning, although no one could say exactly what the warning was. And maybe that is why their unease slowly turned into story, then into myth, then into legend. Because humans always turn nameless fear into a tale, and now the question turns toward us. If we had listened to feelings instead of only to instruments, if we had listened to elders instead of waiting for evidence, would some disasters never have happened? Were the mothers saying, "Do not go," the elders saying, "The lake is not calm today," really being superstitious? Or were they standing in the shadow of a truth we simply did not yet know how to explain? Lake Nyos spent years telling people something in a quiet, persistent way. People thought it was only a story, until one night the legend became real. The warning arrived too late, and the lake finally spoke. Not with sound, but with silence. The night began normally, so normal that people who remembered it later would say that nothing, absolutely nothing, suggested the world was about to change. Because the lake was calm, the air was calm, even nature, which usually lives with small noises, seemed strangely muted. And inside that silence, no one understood that sometimes danger does not announce itself. It simply arrives. As the hours moved on, only small things looked different. Dogs barked into the empty darkness and then suddenly stopped. Birds seemed to change direction and avoid the lake. Cattle shifted nervously, but people were tired, already inside their homes. And those tiny signs that might have formed a larger picture never connected, because no one could even imagine that air itself could change. Then, no one knows exactly when, the lake took a breath. It wasn't really heard as a sound, but it was felt, as if something deep below pushed upward, as if a secret stored for decades finally decided to rise to the surface. And the mirror-smooth water suddenly trembled and swelled, and from between the water rose a thick, pale, ghost-like fog that began to spread into the night. This fog was not steam, not ordinary mist, not a cloud. It was something that looked like air, but was not air at all. Heavy, crawling, refusing to rise, following the shape of the valley like a liquid flowing downhill. And the most frightening part of it was that it made no noise, gave no warning, simply moved forward. While this white mass rolled off the lake and slipped quietly down the slopes, house doors were closed, lamps were out, and people were asleep. No one knew that just outside their windows a world was forming that looked like air, but could not be breathed. A world that looked normal and yet was not. A world drained of oxygen where lungs suddenly had nothing to hold on to. In one house, a child wakes in the night and tries to walk toward their mother, but feels that the air itself has become heavy. In another, a man rises to get water, takes 2 steps, and the room tilts. His vision darkens. Somewhere else, a woman opens the door to look into the yard and sees everything filling with strange fog, feels a sharp tightening in her throat, and before she can even think, she falls. No one could run because running required breathing first, and breathing was the one thing that was no longer possible. As the gas settled into the bottom of the valley, fires went out, conversations stopped mid-sentence. People collapsed exactly where they were. Some reached doorways, some reached windows, some tried to hold their children, but all hit the same wall. An invisible, impenetrable wall made of a gas we would learn the name of too late: carbon dioxide. The night stretched around the lake like this, a sound that wasn't a sound, a darkness that wasn't quite darkness, a thing that was not fire or explosion or smoke, but that stopped life just the same. Nothing burned, nothing broke, nothing crashed. Only the air changed, and that turned out to be stronger than anything else. The flow of gas slid downward through stream beds and roads, filling paths, moving between houses, entering rooms. Some survivors remembered only waking briefly, trying to speak and finding nothing there, feeling their throats closing. feeling as though they were drowning in something invisible, and then memory simply stopped, because even memory needs oxygen. That night, no one screamed. Screaming requires breath. That night, no one called for help, and even if they had, help would not have known what to fight. And that night, the lake finally spoke. Not with sound, but with an overwhelming silence. With the release of years of trapped gas spreading across the valley like a white blanket. When morning came, the sun rose and light touched everything, but nothing answered back. Houses that had been full of voices were quiet. Roads that had been busy were still. People who had been alive the day before remained exactly where they had fallen. And only one question seemed to hang in the air. If the air itself can turn against us, where are we truly safe? When the sun rose over the valley, everything looked ordinary. There was light, there was sky, there was wind, but life was gone. Where birds should have been singing, there was only silence. Where children should have been playing, long still shadows lay across empty yards. It felt as if night had not ended at all, only its color had changed. When rescuers arrived, they understood immediately that this was not a disaster we are used to. Houses were standing, walls were not broken, roads were untouched. Yet people were gone. Everyone lay exactly where they had been, as if time itself had paused for a single moment and forgotten to continue. Nothing had burned, nothing had fallen, only the air had changed. And that was the most terrifying part. The lake remained calm, too calm. Its surface mirrored the sky, pretending innocence, as if nothing had happened. And in that moment, one realizes something important. Danger does not always shout. Sometimes the most dangerous thing in the world looks completely peaceful. Later, science spoke. It explained gases, pressure, deep water, and limnic eruptions. We learned what happened. But even today, we still do not fully know why it happened that exact night. And sometimes it is not the disaster itself that frightens us most. It is the unanswered questions it leaves behind. The survivors carried a different question. Why me? Why not them? Why this house and not the next one? There is no mathematical answer to that. Chance has no clear language. Pain has no simple equation. Years passed. Pipes were lowered into the lake. The gas is now released safely. Reports were written. Maps were changed. But one truth did not change. Silence is not always safety. Sometimes nature warns us not by shouting, but by whispering. Maybe the story of Lake Nyos is not only tragedy, maybe it is a lesson to listen to elders' instincts, to watch the behavior of animals, to notice small changes in the rhythm of nature. Because sometimes, long before any machine detects danger, a human heart becomes uneasy and quietly says, something is wrong here. This story now belongs to us as well. We sit in safe rooms, breathing air we never think about, while the world gently asks us, how well do we really know what surrounds us? How much of it is invisible? Are we always right when we say, nothing can happen here? Lake Nyos is still there. Blue, calm, beautiful. But for those who know its story, one sentence will always seem to lie across its surface. Silence is not always safety. Thank you for watching. If stories like this make you think about nature, about history, about the invisible things around us, then stay with us. Subscribe to the channel. Turn on the notifications, leave a like if this video was interesting, and tell us in the comments. Do you think something like this could happen again today? More untold stories are coming soon. See you in the next video.